Is buying new construction that different from buying an existing home? Hey everyone, this is Cheryl Morrison, your local Chicagoland real estate attorney, and today let's talk new construction. The shortest answer for that question is yes. New construction is very, very different than buying an existing home, and here are the top 3 ways that it is different. First, it takes much longer to close on a new construction home for obvious reasons. The house doesn't exist yet. In most instances with builders, when you enter into a contract such for them to build you a home, they are doing so from scratch. There's been no foundation dug, and they've got to go from there. So that process typically takes 4 or 5, maybe 6 months, give or take. And so, your closing is going to be about that length of time from the time that you sign your contract. Now, depending on what time of year it is, and a few other factors, that might be more time, and perhaps if they've already started digging, it's a little bit less. But you're talking about many months usually, as opposed to a resale where you're looking at 30 to 45 days between when you're signing your contract and when you're closing. So because of this, it's important for you to have a lot more flexibility with a new construction home purchase, because it's really hard to ballpark an exact date that early on, and with weather and all sorts of other issues that might come up, you might be in a position where you are out of a home temporarily, whether that's because you've sold your existing home or perhaps your lease is up, you don't want to renew, knowing that in a month or 2 you'll be in your new home. So it's important to have a backup plan right from the get-go if things start to take longer than you expect, or your current existing home sells quicker than you think. The next thing is that typically new construction requires more earnest money down. Now, with an existing home purchase, out here in the suburbs, you're looking at putting earnest money of, $1,000 to $3,000 usually. Sometimes it could be a bit more than that. Now, if you're moving from Chicago, usually Chicago has earnest money a little bit more than we do here in the suburbs, but that's really a pretty minimal amount compared to when you're building new construction, where it is normal to have 10 grand, 20 grand, even more depending on how expensive the home is that you're building. The builders have really steep upfront costs, especially if you live like in Frankfurt, where their permit is just a ton of money to begin with. They want at least that much to cover their costs, and then as you get under roof and things progress, there might be more payments that are due, and you're easily looking at 10 times what you would be putting up front compared to a resale of an existing home. So it's a lot different. You need to have that cash on hand to do that. And then finally, there just aren't as many contingencies in the contract to protect you as a buyer. And that's, again, partially because the builder has a lot of upfront costs that they incur to build this home for you, and they're on the hook and they want to make sure that you're serious. They want to make sure that they cover those costs in the event that something happens and a deal falls through. They don't want to be short and not have another person who is looking to build a home to the specs that you had already arranged for yourself. So that's a bigger deal. And then they also don't use the typical standard, multi-board 7 resale contract that we use for existing home sales. And they, typically have one that they've created themselves, or they've had a lawyer create for themselves, and it is very much skewed toward the builder. The mortgage contingency in there usually does not take you all the way through the closing date, or even close to it, like you would with a resale. Now, if you're buying an existing home, you usually have up until like about a week before the closing date to get your financing in order. And if you just find out that 10 days beforehand that you're not approved for that financing, so long as you're still within that mortgage contingency, you can say, oh, I can't buy it after all, give me my earnest money back, and you'll get it. Not so for a new construction build. Usually you have maybe 30 or 45 days at the beginning to get your financing in order. And then after that, you're going to have a gap between that financing contingency and your closing date, maybe a month or two or more. And if you find out after that point that you cannot get the approval, you're kind of out your earnest money, which again is a lot greater in this new construction as opposed to a resale. And you're talking about potentially losing $10,000, $20,000 or more $1,000 because of that. So it is really, really imperative before you enter into a contract to buy new construction that you consult with an attorney who does a lot of real estate and is familiar with new construction builds, so that we can explain everything to you, negotiate whatever is possible to negotiate, and best protect your interest. So I hope that this has been helpful. It really kind of is just the tip of the iceberg as far as new construction, but those are 3 really important things to keep in mind if you're thinking about buying new construction. Now, as a side note, my husband and I now have bought 2 new construction builds. I think it's an awesome choice. I'm definitely not trying to dissuade you from getting a new construction home, because it can really be wonderful. It's just something that you want to go into having a little bit more information. So if you found this information valuable, do give this video a like, share it with anyone else who might appreciate it as well, and subscribe so you can continue seeing my videos. Thanks everyone. Bye.